Hey, it's Dookey Lukey, and I am joined by Cammy and Vox, two of my buddies I've been gaming with for a while, and we are going to discuss a little bit about the last decade of gaming and what is to come. Cammy, Vox, thank you guys so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, super happy that you guys could make it. We actually did another podcast in the distant past, probably about 3 years ago now. If anyone wants to check that out, I'll add another link in there too, where we just kind of talked about gaming in general, and I really like that. So the whole idea of this was to be a follow-up on that, and leading forward to see what else we can come up with. First things first, when we're talking about the last 10 years of gaming, a lot has happened. So for each of you guys, what does 2010 to 2020 look like for you in terms of gaming?
Well, 10 years ago, I believe was about the time I met you. I think it was 2011 when we started playing together.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cam, I met in 2014. I don't know a better way to describe this. I don't really want to use this term, but I feel like to me, gaming's lost a bit of its innocence the beginning of the decade. It's grown up and it's entered the more mainstream media, society, whatever. To me personally, a little bit of the magic is lost. I don't have that same immersive enjoyment of a new game that I'm playing that I may have had back in 2010, 2011, when I was still waiting on midnight releases to play Skyrim the day it came out. And part of that I attribute to growing up and being an adult. I'm older, I'm wiser, I have other things to do now that sap a lot of my time. But it's not the same experience looking back as it was, even 6 years ago when the first Destiny came out and we really started entering the media streaming sphere of all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So in the last 10 years, you'd say it's kind of taken a turn from more of a magical sort of thing to just kind of like more corporate style. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
From my personal perspective as a player, it's lost some of the luster for me. And I don't know if that's just from my growing older and having more experience that I remember, or if I'm just cynical of things now. I am cynical.
Maybe nowadays they try to appeal to so many extra audiences since it is mainstream that it maybe loses a little bit of that appeal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For me personally, in 2010 to 2020, I played a lot less variety of games and rather just stuck with one or two games for a very long period of time. And before 2010, I maybe would play a game for a few days and move on to the next.
Yeah, I'd say very similar for me, like 2010 to 2020. See, the games that I have definitely played the most over that time, I'd say League of Legends has definitely taken up the most of my time over the last decade, and there's been one that I've consistently come back to because it has a lot of replayability, but also Call of Duty in the franchise, but more so in the first part of the decade than the later part. Like I haven't played much of the last 5 that came out, but in terms of 2010, which one even released in 20? Was that Modern Warfare 2?
2010 was Black Ops. It was Black Ops 1 was 2010.
Black Ops 1. Sure. No, I think you're right. Yeah, Black Ops 1.
Yeah.
And then Black Ops 1, and then Modern Warfare 3 released when I was in my sophomore year of college, and I remember playing that like crazy. It's like a big reason I failed out of school. And then and then playing into and then Black Ops 2 is where I met Vox actually, and playing with Barney and Ice. Barney and Matt were playing with Ice and Radius, and then we all got connected that way. And I actually met Cammy through playing Destiny 1 back. Man, how long ago was that? When did Destiny 1 even release?
2014 was when that came out.
No way.
Yeah. I think I met Cam in 2014.
I met you both in year one. Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Because I remember Cammy took over the Triple Tuesday from Barney, which was super cool. I loved that series. But then, as you grew, I'm sure that became probably so unmanageable, getting a bunch of submissions from people.
Yeah, that's definitely just a learning lesson for the future for content creation. When you're dealing with a lot of other people, it takes a lot of time versus more personal content.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, just make me the winner every week, and you didn't have an issue. But...
Yeah, but you genuinely won every week. That was the problem.
Hey,
you cannot tell me this is not the best clip of Triple Tuesday, and they're like, "You're right."
Yeah, that's fair. No,
Yeah,
yeah, that was honestly so much fun though to watch and be like, oh, who's gonna win? But so speaking of the games that we were playing, so was there a most impactful game for either of you guys where you're like, if you think about it, you're like, yes, that game for me just like defined the decade.
2010 to 2020 was a long stretch of time.
I mean, are
It's
we
true.
talking are we talking personal impact? Because I
Yes.
don't want to bring it up so early, but I've God, I mean, Fortnite's got to be the most impactful thing in the decade, and I've never played it once, and I have no intention to.
You know,
But
you're probably right. Like that's
100%.
a heavy contender for most impactful game of the decade.
I'm so sorry. No,
Does Minecraft start? Does Minecraft count as the last decade or this decade?
That is, I mean,
when did Minecraft officially become a game? Like, when was its actual?
I think that might have been
commercial
around
release?
2010.
I don't remember.
I feel like it
actually.
was 2009/2010. That's when it.
I
in
mean,
some
Wikipedia says was released in 2011 as an official.
It looks like initial release date was 2009 in May, but on the more real side, the impact that it had throughout this last decade is more what we're talking about, I guess. So even if it didn't release then, it was still extremely.
Well, no, yeah, I have no problem including it because it's still evolving in ways today. It's not like it's a game that's no longer getting patched or something.
And it's still extremely relevant with it.
I feel that Minecraft had that Fortnite level impact on that decade. So I think
agree.
it's worth
I think if I was gonna say the games that in my mind were the most impactful in general, I would say Minecraft, Fortnite, and League of Legends. And
very fair.
I'd put League of Legends in there too for the reason that it had such a big impact because it still remains, I think, most played game or at least a top contender throughout the whole decade. Again, I think it released back in 2009 or 7 or something, like a couple of years before that, but really picked up and like got out of the beta back then.
Honestly, League set the stage for something like Fortnite to later succeed in that esport realm. Mm-hmm. So that's very fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of going off of what you're saying there, it did really kind of blow up what esports is today. Before I get into all that, because that is a whole thing in itself, is there a game for you each individually that you have had that has had the most impact on you?
I mean, to kind of reiterate what Cam mentioned earlier, I've sort of stuck to a fewer number of games over a longer period of time rather than just going out and buying everything that sort of suits my fancy and I'll play that for a week, whatever. Which is really ironic because now as an adult, you have a lot more income to purchase games you want. You just have less interest in a variety of different titles. I mean, most impactful on a personal level,
you can choose a couple too. Any that come to mind where you're like, "Ooh, man, that was a."
If I had to pick just one, you're holding the gun to my head, it'd just be RuneScape. Like that's it, RuneScape.
Dang, dude, yeah, RuneScape is a solid game.
And the reason that I include that, even though it's an old game, is because it got a re-release, and this is such a cool story over the years of just how the company, the development behind RuneScape, the company is called Jagex. Made a crucial mistake of not listening to the community to the point where the game just died. Everybody left, and years later they said, wait, we have a backup. We have a backup from 2007, and we'll re-release it. And the community's like, that sounds great. And from moving on from that point forward, they listened to the community a lot, really involved them in polls and future decision-making for content. And it's a totally different game now.
That's super cool. Because I think so many developers nowadays are doing kind of the opposite, where they just do what they want to do. I think it's starting to I think the wheel's starting to turn back towards the players having the power, kind of like what you're saying. But it seems like this last decade has really been categorized as being told what you want versus like getting the games that you want.
Well, yes. There's a difference between the community having a voice that the developer uses for input whenever, and then the community being a bunch of whiners that just say, well, we don't like this, change it, and the developer's head snapping back and forth every month as they try to please everybody. That's not going to work. And I know from playing way too much Destiny over the past 3 years, that can also be a really bad thing.
For sure.
I mean, it works both ways. if I had to go just give you a final answer to that question, I think the game that's had the most personal impact to me, it'd probably have to be Borderlands 2.
Yeah, I put that on my list too.
And
That's a good choice.
That's not saying that it's my favorite game of the decade. That's not saying it's the game I've played the most, even though it probably is up there in my hierarchy of time invested. The first Borderlands came out when I was a freshman in college, and I was going through really rough personal issues at that time with I know it's cliche. I'm not trying to, sound my own sob story or anything, but I was going through anxiety issues and I ended up dropping out of school.
Mm-hmm.
And the original Borderlands was one of those things that I sort of clung to, and it kept me, maybe a little over exaggeration, it kept me from losing my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So when the second one came out, and it's somehow in almost every single measurable aspect a better game than the first one, I can still play Borderlands 2 today and enjoy it. It has stood the test of the last, 8 years? It was 2012 when that came out.
A lot of choices in that game have more than stood the test of time. It is such a joy to go back and play.
It is awesome. Yeah. I know my wife and I actually started playing through that. Haven't finished it. She kind of lost interest, because she's just, I love her to death, but she can't really stick with a good game. Is
it the first person aspect? Because I know a lot of people sometimes struggle with first person viewpoints and not having a clear...
honestly was never much of a gamer, except for very casually. She played Harvest Moon and stuff. The only time she actually really got into gaming was when she moved out here to Seattle area, and she got into Skyrim. She almost never played games, and then she's here. She legally couldn't work because she's from Canada, and she had to hang out. And so I brought over my Xbox and Skyrim, the remastered one for Xbox One, and she went so hard into that game. And I get a call from her. She's reading off a list of items that she had picked up. Are these worth trashing, or should I keep these, this and that? And then she's like, Luke, I need you to come home. There's a dragon. I don't know what to do. And then later on, she's just doing everything, no problem. But she was so nervous at first playing it. It was adorable.
I think Skyrim has to come into that conversation. Sorry.
No,
it's kind of a dead horse at this point. People just they keep re-releasing. There's a reason they keep re-releasing it, because y'all keep buying it.
It's such a. I have 3 copies of it. I'm guilty of that. It's super fun. Of course I'm gonna. Yeah, you get it on the Switch. Of course I'm gonna buy that.
Yeah, I have it on my smart fridge.
Probably. That's a very valid.
Say on the subject of non-gamers playing or getting into gaming, a YouTuber by the name of Rasputin, Razbuten, does a series where he, I guess, documents his wife playing a game and her approach from having zero gaming experience. Oh. It's a really good eye-opener.
I've seen a few of those. Yeah, they are actually awesome. Yeah, totally.
And it's interesting to see what I guess people in your life, your family, your significant others, whatever, latch onto when it comes to gaming with different levels of experience. So for girlfriends of mine in the past that have had zero gaming experience, one really, really, really latched onto the Dead Rising series of all things. But couldn't really get into first-person shooters.
Dead Rising, is that the one?
Yeah, Capcom zombie game, and it has a lot of elements of comedy to it.
So you just build the paddle chainsaw thing and go
exactly
through zombies. Exactly. Oh, I loved that game. That I remember I got the beta for it free on Xbox 360 for the second one or something. There's the downloadable, demo for it. And put back when I smoked a lot of weed, I remember putting so many hours just into the demo, going through putting together all the stupid things because it was so satisfying. For me, I would definitely have to say the most impactful games of the last decade. I'd say League of Legends, just because I've put the most amount of time into that. But then there's some other games, one that I played for even though I only played it for 2 years of the decade, the start of it, it was called Endless Online. And it was my favorite game in 8th grade, similar to RuneScape actually, but it was an anime. It not like Maple Story though, where it's the side scrolling kind of thing, but it's anyways, it had a very similar style where you have to. It was really grindy. There's no max level cap, and I played that game so much until I got my account hacked, and then I'm okay, maybe I should stop playing this. I'm 20.
Back to real life.
Yeah. But I absolutely love that game, and so. I'd say League of Legends and that, and then, we can't not mention Skyrim. Skyrim was, I remember when that came out was also around the time of Modern Warfare 3, and when we're done like getting sweaty, because me and the boys back in the day, sadly enough, I'd put Modern Warfare 3 for me also as one of the most impactful games, simply because of the time of release. It's when I was living on my own for the first time in a house. I had my Xbox set up and I had like my own responsibility, which I did not do great, because I didn't do like anything besides playing that. And it was so much fun though. I remember me, Barney, Matt Cow, and my cousin Dana, and like a couple other, my brother, and like a couple other people. We had like a squad of like 8 people that we switched in and out, and we got like a over 200 game win streak in just playing Sabotage. But yeah, going back to Skyrim came out at that time, and I remember when we were like done getting sweaty, we'd all just be in voice chat with each other playing Skyrim, and it was awesome.
I think I know the answer, but when y'all played Sabotage, was it let's just get in there, plant the bomb, and win in 30 seconds, or was it no, I want to pound their spawn for 15 minutes? I know the answer.
No, you don't know the answer, actually. It's not the pound the spawn. It was go straight for the win.
I don't believe that.
Yeah,
Barney was in the party, y'all spawn pounded.
No. Everyone would go marathon. Barney would run, like the rest of us would have smokes. Barney would always pick up the bomb. We would just throw smokes dead ahead, wipe them once, and then plant the bomb and then wipe them again.
Wipe them again, and yeah.
We were so sweaty like that. It was gross, because we were going for the win streak.
That's fantastic. Not trying to disparage Barney or anything, but he totally would play that way in Black Ops 2. So I just
anyway. I mean that's super valid. Going for just the slaughter is normally how we played the game, but when we were doing this, we're going like same mentality of just stomping the enemy, but just for the win. To continue on that, I remember there was a group of like a team of 5 or 6 that we're going up against, and they were all ranked in the top 100 of Sabotage, which out of 10 million player base or whatever is pretty nuts.
No, is this like total score for time played, or is this like points per minute?
It was like, just like in score for that game. Okay. So they played it a lot, but they were the ones that trapped you in there and kept doing that. I remember we get into the lobby and we were just like talking trash to them, and we smack them, and then they stayed in because they wanted to beat us, and we beat them like 5 times in a row before they backed out. And we're just like, that was like the hardest flex for us.
That would never happen to me. Nobody stays in matches anymore.
That's true.
Well, the game doesn't let you.
No, you can definitely requeue.
Oh yeah, I know. But if you beat a team by too much nowadays, it's like the game's like, we're gonna break that match up. This is not
that too. Yeah, there's actually something in game preventing that. Then I think there's player culture where they're just like, let's magically disappear. That was unfun. Like, no, it's a challenge that you rise up to.
That's kind of actually awesome. That transitions into exactly what I wanted to talk about next. In what ways do you guys feel like has gaming improved or shifted, or what ways has it kind of like degraded? And so, to start it off, I do think that the E for everyone aspect of games, like not offending people, kind of was taken out of it. That was half the fun, when you could talk in a lobby to the enemy team, or like in game, you hear people die and you're like, oh, damn it, stop camping. You hear like whatever. Like,
there is a difference between like shit talking and just being an asshole. Like there is a difference. I know that may be hard for some people to differentiate, but like as long as you keep it about the game, as long as you're not like insulting someone personally, anything goes pretty much. That's the way I've always viewed it. Like if I messed up, you want to make fun of my strafe, you like, oh my God, you got turned on. Just don't bring it to where you're like insulting my family and that kind of thing.
I wish I could agree with you on that, but I'm not gonna lie.
Well, no, I'm not saying
it's kind of fun going in that direction.
I'm not gonna take personal offense if you make fun of my family, but I understand for the larger like community of a game or in a global audience, there does need to be a line drawn. The developer has to be wary of allowing that sort of behavior. I'm speaking more of a devil's advocate point of view here. You shouldn't have to mute your entire list of teammates because they're being jackasses.
Also true.
So I don't know. There's a fine line there. And I do think on a personal level, it may not offend me, but I understand where the developer is coming from with regards to allowing that sort of behavior.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting dilemma from the developer side. As games become more mainstream and there's more of an audience, how much casual protection is necessary to make those sales? Because it definitely, I would say all of us here are in that hardcore demographic. So how does that affect our gameplay, and is it worth it? Obviously, because they keep doing it. But I mean, what is that number?
I don't think it affects my gameplay at all. The biggest
maybe overall enjoyment, because like I feel like we do all appreciate that in lobby banter.
I'm sounding a little softer than I may actually be in my stance on this. One of the biggest disappointments for me, and I'm going to speak about Destiny, and because it made the transition to PC, whatever. It doesn't have an all access chat in game, and I don't really like that in multiplayer. If someone hits a nice shot, I want to be able to type like NS in the chat and be like, okay, that was a nice shot. The guy either says thank you or he ignores it, whatever. That's not the point.
It really takes away from depressing. The MMO. I agree. RuneScape, for example, way back in the day, already had this covered. You had public chat, you had private chat, you had clan chat, etc. And if you never wanted to hear public chat, all you had to do was tab away from it.
Yep.
It also made me really, really good at typing, because if you beat somebody in PvP, you had like a window of maybe 2 seconds to type in whatever you needed to type before they get sent back to the spawn. So you needed to type out whatever you needed to type in those 2 seconds. Like, get wrecked, kid, sit down. Before they could even respond to you, they're in the spawn screen.
That's awesome. How chat's changed from like, I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily just a developer standpoint too. I think a lot of people have just grown up also, where I would still like to be able to talk and party and stuff, but it's not something I really do very frequently. And I don't even know why. Like even in games where it's available, I know when I'm playing Apex by myself, I'll drop with people and I'll usually not even turn on my mic. But then I know in a few occasions I've turned it on and been like, hey, nice job, guys. And they're like, hey, what's up? And it's kind of cool to actually like have that connection again. But that seems more rare when back, when I was playing like Halo 2 or Halo 3 or like getting into even the Call of Duties, like it was so common to have your mic on. And I think now people also just have it off by default because they're like, I don't want to hear little kids, or I don't want to hear people getting crazy.
Yeah, but also I think as far as improvements in this decade, holy crap, Discord has been the game changer. I know we had Ventrilo, TeamSpeak, Skype, whatever in the past, but Discord's put it all in one place.
Yeah.
Well, Skype was always, yeah, and TeamSpeak you had to pay for a server. Discord being free has completely changed that.
Yeah, Discord.
So as far as a social thing, that little thing I'm lacking in game, I can now get out of game. It's just as simple as trying to say in game, yo, discord.gg/whatever, and then next person's in, and pretty soon, an hour later, you actually have a party, just like the old days.
No, that's true, but because of the nature of Discord being outside of the game, you lose some of that more organic interaction with players because you meet a guy in a Call of Duty lobby or a Halo lobby or whatever first-person shooter we were playing 10 years ago. You say, hey, man, what's up? If you make a connection where it's like, this cool, you add them as a friend, and then the next time you're playing a game, you might invite them, you might do a party chat, whatever. But Discord is sort of disconnected from gaming because it's not in the server. And just because I meet someone I like playing a video game doesn't mean I want them in my Discord seeing the other aspects of the socializing I go on with. I don't, and I think, Cam, you can touch on this from being the owner of a massive Discord server. It's just a pain trying to deal with all the different people interacting in that space and having to regulate it.
Yeah, I would say so. There's definitely some pros and cons there, but it's like you said, just the disconnect from in-game to Discord. Mm-hmm. While Discord is cool because it offers so many advantages for setting up social situations, you still have to set them up.
Yeah. I'd say what I like about Discord is it's kind of like Xbox Live Party Chat, like the way I think of it. Because like back in Xbox, like if you wanted to talk to your friends outside of the actual game, but just be connected to your friends, you have that. What I do really like about Discord, though, is it is just a central hub where it seems like everybody has it. And because everyone's agreed on it, it kind of makes it just better in itself. Where it is so convenient to be able to just hop in Discord and be able to talk to whoever, instead of, like you were saying, with all these other ways of communicating. And each game, too, has their own voice issues. Like I've noticed when trying to play Modern Warfare with some of my friends, or even on Xbox, me and some of my friends, even if we both have open NAT types, for some reason our internet hates each other and we can't talk. If we're on Discord, fine. I would give Discord huge props. So another thing that I wanted to add on the whole being able to speak and how developers have to like balance how much they can let people do in their game to communicate with others and that experience versus how much they need to like kind of put restrictions on it. And I think another thing that has really blown up in the last 10 years is through like YouTube and Twitch is you can really get exposed. Before, you were a complete separate entity from your online identity. Who you were as me being Dookey Lukey playing games, I would trash talk. I wouldn't even think twice about it. Like Xbox Live in the earlier days too, people would say literally anything. And now that it's getting a little bit more connected, where like, you know, if you record, if you're playing with someone, they could be streaming, they could be recording it, and then somehow you can actually get connected back to you. So I'm just saying it's a little bit more public than it used to be because of these platforms.
100%. I mean, that even like feeds into my real life at this point. I don't say anything without thinking twice because I've been under recording button so often, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because you've got a pretty decent following on YouTube and Twitch, and through Destiny, it probably makes it a different experience being online because you have
pretend that the last 30 seconds of any given minute can be just recorded and played over and over again. And if I can't make what I said sounded right within those 30 seconds, I've failed. Like, that's just something that I live with now.
So
example I always give is that Scooby-Doo movie where Fred is getting an interview from the news, and he goes, "You guys are trying to make it look like I think Coolsville sucks." And then later on the night when the news is playing, it goes, "And message from Fred." He goes, "I think Coolsville sucks." So
that's actually so perfect.
Taken out of context. Yeah, anyone can screenshot a chat log now. Anyone can Photoshop a screenshot of a chat log now, and they can be hilarious. You know, like, oh, look what this guy said. That's funny. Someone else takes it completely the wrong way, and then suddenly you've got, you know, allegations of a guy being hostile or overly aggressive through chat. And I'm one of those people that, for the most part, like 99.9% of situations, I'm going to let the two people have their conversation. I'm going to let them have an argument. Like, if you're having a discussion or argument, that's fine. As long as you're not just making the chat unbearable for every other person in it. I don't ban people in Twitch chat unless they're like coming in and just, you know, they're obviously just a created account to be an asshole.
Yeah.
Being a moderator and having a little green sword next to my name does not give me permission to censor what goes on in a chat room. I'm there to deal with someone who's, you know, like being a troll. They just come in to promote another channel and they're clearly an account that was made 20 minutes ago. That's fine. I'll ban them. So it's kind of a headache for me when people start going at it, because I feel like I want to make Cam Stream inviting. I want to make it so that people feel like they have a voice and a place to talk. But at the same time, I don't want to be a government censor and you can't say that, you know.
Exactly.
Well, I think that transitions nicely into talking about how platforms such as Twitch and YouTube have really helped to shape the gaming environment over the last decade. They both have been phenomenally impactful in bringing it as mainstream as it could come, because before that, you know, you'd maybe go and watch some games for like MLG or something, but I know, at least for me, back before 2010, stuff I watched was like some stuff on Rooster Teeth, just like Red vs. Blue, or like some montages here and there, but I wasn't like on YouTube as like a source of entertainment consistently, and Twitch wasn't even a thing then. So to have those blow up as they have really has impacted gaming tremendously.
I don't remember God, it's been so long. I don't remember what it was like, because I started watching YouTube in 2008 with the Call of Duty guys, the Machinima, what were they called? Machinima directors.
Mm-hmm.
It was just something I watched because I like playing the games, and these guys were playing it and talking over their gameplay and whatever. And that was cool. But yeah, I don't really have a good perspective from an outsider view how big that world actually was in 2008, 2009. And now, obviously, you know, you have people that their entire livelihood is built upon sitting in front of a computer and a mic and playing a video game. Because, like, in my mind, back then, it was the same as it is now. You know, like, people were putting gameplay and recording it and whatever, and they were getting paid for it. But obviously it's moved from a very niche thing to, like you said, mainstream.
I'll chime in there and say that the 2010 to 2020 era was the absolute nail in the coffin for cable for me. Before then, it was like my family had it, and I would watch maybe one thing a week on it. Once the 2010s hit and that YouTube and Twitch started becoming really, really, really accessible, as well as video on demand, that's when it's just there's no point. I couldn't even consume cable if I wanted to because so much priority is given to YouTube and Twitch for me.
Yeah, I don't even know how it works anymore. Are like HBO and Stars and stuff still things you have to pay for with like a cable subscription, or are they just all online streaming services?
I don't know.
I don't know the answer.
It's crazy to see how that's all changed. I never had cable growing up, so I remember it always being like a privilege getting to watch it whenever I was over at like a friend's house or something. In terms of like finding specialized content, not only did it make it like so readily available and easy to just mass consume, it also made it easy to produce. So what you were talking about, like, yeah, like it was a thing like prior to 2010, but I guess in my mind, I think over this last decade, it's matured into what it is today, where anybody can, if they want to, at the most base level, you just have to have a really basic microphone and some recording software, which you can get for free and play games that are even free. I mean, like the barrier to entry is so low. While, you know, in those starting days, it was a lot harder. Most people didn't know how to, like, there wasn't all.
It was a lot harder, and the standard of quality, I would say, was really, really low.
Like, for instance, I remember watching those Call of Duty videos. They're like in 360p, and it's just
okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about the unregistered Hypercam 2 and Notepad. They don't even have the microphone. They just, drag the Notepad on screen. Hey guys, this is my tutorial on the Desert Treasure Quest in RuneScape.
Yes. Yeah, and videos have just exploded since then.
It's funny that you mentioned this is like a guide, because in my mind there is still a little bit of a difference between producing content to inform someone. You make a guide, this is how you do this. Okay, that's cool. And then you have the streaming where there's not really a designated structure. The guy or girl or whoever, they're just playing a video game and they're talking to a text chat that's scrolling past their face. Like, there is a difference between having a dedicated idea of this is what I want to do. And I guess that's more, the YouTube side of it, where you create a video, you have a plan, and this is what you're making. Whereas with like live streaming, you kind of just do whatever you want and there's no roadmap for it.
Yeah, in these kind of days where I'm doing the just mindless MMO grind, I want to get to know my Twitch chat better, and I will be there as the human encyclopedia if they need me, or just a friend to talk to if they don't. And that's up to them. Just YouTube content, it's a structured idea. My YouTube content is, I want to show off this specific perk set on a weapon with this strategy and try to make it happen. And if it doesn't, maybe that's the video.
I know, even in just like the little time I was in your Twitch chat just the other night, it went on a full range of emotion in the depth of conversation, because you were grinding it out and you were trying to get to know people. And I thought that was super cool, and that people have that accessibility to people that they actually watch. Because before it was just, there was a lot more of a disconnect, I think. So in terms of a lot of kids nowadays, they like when they grow up, they want to be like a YouTuber. I think that's the biggest answer among kids for what they want to do as a career in the future, because that's what they consume and what they see. So it has a whole nother, like, how do I put it? Like, it's made it so impressionable youths can now see the people that they really enjoy and actually interact with them on a normal basis, but whether it is the comments on a YouTube video or watching someone stream. Because I know that
I got two stories for you on that subject.
Leave a thought in the comments section below. Is a lot different than a live chat interaction.
True.
I got two stories for you on that subject.
Hit it.
So we'll take before the 2010s. I would pretty much watch YouTube as just entertainment and as guides for the games I played. And a lot of these content creators at the time did not do this as a career. They did this as a hobby. And that's what I wanted to do as a hobby. So I started learning it. Started modeling some content after that, trying to add my own flair to it. And it wasn't until years later when Destiny released, and this is after doing RuneScape content, after doing Battlefield content, that I started to apply those same formulas that succeeded in RuneScape in a totally different game atmosphere. This is a first-person shooter, and people started latching on to it. And so pretty soon, I started passing up what I would consider my idols in the RuneScape community and just sheer numbers and volume over the years in Destiny, despite everyone being active over time. So to me, that was a nice personal thumbs up there, that you turn the hobby into the career at a certain point, but also that it was just a fun hobby in general. Next story is going to be later in college. I had to, because of my education minor, start co-teaching in schools. One of these classes I went to was like a second grade class, and the teacher, of course, was doing some sort of career-based lesson where kids explore their interests and that sort of thing. And one of the answers that actually got brought up a lot is, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a YouTuber. And I have to sit there as, a student teacher and keep my mouth shut. Like, that'll never happen when I'm sitting there being a YouTuber myself.
Mm-hmm.
But did you go into being a YouTuber as this is what my career is going to be, or did you just get caught up in your success and you're like, well, I'm going to run with it and see where it goes?
The latter. I'm going to run with this. I always had planned to finish college and use my degree to find a good career that I'm interested in.
Now, how has your perspective on gaming changed since you decided to do it full time? Is it like still a hobby in your mind that just happens to pay the bills, or do you approach it differently because it's now the moneymaker?
A little bit of both. When Destiny was at its best for me, it did not feel like a job whatsoever. But now that maybe some of the things that appealed to me personally are gone, I do some days have to say, yeah, I'm going to have to take a really, really boring day of content, but the payoff is going to be worth it. Not like necessarily in money in the future, but it's just like you have to do some grindy, boring stuff in MMOs to move ahead.
You mean like 4980 Nightfalls in a row? Yeah, that was.
Yeah, exactly,
that was fun.
Exactly.
Definitely must change the mindset significantly. And like we're saying with the two platforms, Twitch and YouTube. So those are the platforms you create on, right? Are there any other platforms that you use?
No, just those two.
So then in having the, I guess, I don't want to make it sound like a bad thing, but like dependency on those two. I know with a lot of creators, when policies change or when something changes on them, it's like, boom, like, oh my gosh, like what am I going to do? Because that's how their success was built up. Is that something that you have to think about on a relatively somewhat basis, or is that something that's just in the back of your head?
Yes, but I have, plan Bs, plan Cs, plan Ds put into place, so that's not as much of a worry.
That's good.
It's always there, right? That either YouTube or Twitch or both will fail, but there's a reason that I'm doing both of them simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
What I like that has happened in the past, I've actually been demonetized in YouTube, and so I sort of started to tap back into the college degree to supplement income during that time. And what I did was I offered coaching, because that is genuinely what I went to school for. Of course, sometimes it would apply to Destiny too, but the point is it was there and I could still make a living from it.
It's really good to have another backup plan to see like what you're going to do, because I think putting all of your eggs in one basket almost for anything. I know for me, like getting into YouTube, I didn't think I would ever have like that was never my goal, is to like blow up and have raging success. I just was like, I love gaming and I want to make some videos that reflect that and get into it. And I did stuff that was a mixture of, making guide videos to just random playthroughs, and then just like stupid little like skit things that I made that I loved. And funny enough, that's for me what started me into video editing. And if I didn't get into that originally, I wouldn't have edited for the people I did. And now I do videography and photography and video editing and motion graphics work and all of that stuff. And it really did start from just editing videos for YouTube. And it's crazy how just pursuing something like YouTube evolved into that.
My personal kind of motto with that is there are two things I'm going to put effort and energy into, and that's things I enjoy and things that I'm getting paid to do. And if I'm fortunate, they'll be the same thing.
It's a good mentality.
You can't look at something and be like, oh, I enjoy it, so it's not a job. If it's your career, if it's how you make your money, like Cam was alluding to with the mindless grinding for items in an MMO, you're gonna have to go through days where you just, I don't really want to do this, but you do it anyway because you know in the long run it's gonna help you.
In the long run, it not only gives me money, but also improves my enjoyment of the game, which is what I want in the first place.
For the most part, a successful content creator, their audience is going to enjoy watching them regardless of what they're doing, because the content creator is interactive or they're entertaining outside of what's happening in the game. I think that's something that isn't really discussed so much in the entry point to making content. Like you said, anybody with a basic microphone and OBS can stream their game to the internet. That doesn't mean they're going to get an audience, even if they're skilled at playing the game. If they're not entertaining, if they're not interactive, people are not going to migrate to them when you have someone who is just a click away.
I would agree with you, but to bring up a counterpoint on that, when it comes to consuming content, if you do set yourself up in a position, because I know there's like different channels that I watch. There's ones that do Korean highlights of League of Legends, and I love watching that, and they do the highlights, but then occasionally they'll do a live stream. And for me, I'm like, nah, like, it's not that their gameplay isn't good. It's just, if I'm going to watch someone live stream, I'd watch somebody else. But it is that mix. Some people do get popular not because of their personality, but because of maybe they're super good at the game or something different. I think for streaming, you do have to have a degree of personality or something quirky about you, because it is live. But in terms of YouTube, I think it can be more varied.
YouTube is very different because you're allowed to edit your thought. This is really a tangent. I don't want to explore too much, but I want the point out there. The ability to clip or record people's content on Twitch as a live stream, I think it's, when I see those montage compilation videos on YouTube where a guy has just ripped like 30 Twitch clips from other people's streams and he puts it as a video and suddenly he's got, 50,000 views on it.
And makes a living based on that.
I'm not even the person whose stuff is being ripped off, and it irritates me.
Definitely something I want to talk about too. Yeah, that's super frustrating for me as someone who does like to create stuff. I don't like that the platform itself, YouTube, really does give such weight to some kind of content like that. Speaking of content, just one very specific style of video that I don't know why it just irks me is those try not to laugh videos. Have you ever seen a YouTuber do one of those?
Of course.
I mean, I know what you're talking about. I don't click on them because they're pointless. But
it's like,
I think I made it through 2 of them.
I succeeded in the not laughing part, but like, material for kids has been highly promoted, but now it's like kind of dialing back, that you have to label if your videos are for kids and stuff. But it was so easy to get, if you wanted kids to watch it, that was like the largest audience on YouTube. So if you wanted to succeed, you kind of had to target that a bit. And for those videos, it just feels, for me personally, like disingenuous. Like people aren't necessarily like having that good of a time. They're just like,
no, I mean, but they're playing the algorithm. They're trying to get their view count so they can be noticed in the recommendations.
So Twitch and YouTube both have been like extremely impactful platforms for gaming over the last 10 years, of course. And I think one of the biggest ways that, not just through creators, but also as video games as an esport, and how that has just taken off. Because I know MLG was like a popular-ish thing. I mean, like in the gaming community, that was like a way that you could get competitive, but it is nothing like it is today. With Twitch, there is such an availability of being able to watch high-level gameplay and professional gameplay, and for organizers to put together events that they can live stream to people who will want to see them. Because I think that was one of the biggest hurdles before, is how do you get this in front of the viewers? And, I know different channels. Even MLG, I'm pretty sure took out a channel on, was it ESPN, or like just took out a channel, just play the videos, but it just never really hit home. And I think Twitch is the perfect platform for that. So how do you guys feel like esports has grown over the last 10 years?
Yeah, I think in particular reference to what you're saying, I know MLG had a deal with ESPN where they would do like those top 10 clips or whatever. And I want to say back in Halo 2, maybe it was through G4 or one of those channels where like they would actually broadcast MLG events on television. the audience of the platform, in this case the television broadcaster, the audience didn't sync up with the audience for the esport. And so Twitch, being a game streaming service, it gave esports a platform where they could broadcast and not have that widespread variance in the audience of the platform versus the audience of the content. You don't have to pay to watch a Twitch channel.
So how do you guys feel like the view of esports? I think this is something where over the last 10 years, it has come into the mainstream. And now in the last at least couple of years, it's started to really, like, people have had to actually think about it. Before, if you brought up, like, I know at least when I was a kid, on multiple occasions, people were like, oh, you can't do that for a living. You're not going to be able to play video games. And now it's a legitimate option. And with esports, there are professional athletes that come into the country and can get their what's it called? Their visa from the government because they are an athlete. And whether you want to get into like the whole athlete thing and digital athlete or whatever, for it to be nationally recognized by the government, I think is a huge thing. And like the tournaments that are set up have grown like crazy. I know personally, League of Legends is the one I follow, and the production value, you can see each year just how it steps up and steps up. And they've really paved the way for gaming tournaments and for esports, as well as, and then others have really picked up onto it. But are there any that you guys follow in particular where you're like, wow, they've done a great job with this? Or are there any esports that you guys really enjoy?
I liked following the progression of the Smash Melee scene over the years.
Ooh.
And I'm going to say that that's maybe the exception to the rule in terms of accessibility of big prize pools, because that's one of the few ones where the prize pools are still, a bag of chips sometimes. So by comparison to Fortnite's latest 3 million.
I mean, you're not winning as much winning Evo as you would from, Fortnite's tournament.
So way back in the day, even if you were the best in the world at a fighting game, it was still a hobby.
Yes.
Nowadays, you can be top 100 and make a living. That's a drastic difference.
Through competitions and even through sponsorships.
I was going to say, are you really making a living from winning the tournament? Or are you making a living because you've got Twitch on the back of your shirt and they've paid you a bunch of money to rep that?
Yes to both of those. But this is why I brought up Smash Melee. Smash Melee is the one where I think you could be top in the world and it's still a hobby, unless you count all those sponsorships and Twitch streams and that side revenue. But something like Fortnite, it can absolutely be a career without any of that stuff by just winning a single tournament.
Wasn't that guy who won like the $3 million Fortnite tournament, wasn't he like a relatively unknown player? Like he wasn't one of the big names that was
I don't follow it, so I don't know enough about this, but I'm just going to guess and say yes.
I mean, like I said before, I've never played Fortnite, but I think I remember reading like the guy who won it was not someone who was particularly known. Like he was not expected to win this tournament.
It wasn't like one of the projected highest people.
I think that's wonderful that he won the tournament, because I feel like in a lot of more established esports, and I'm using that term simply because Fortnite is still relatively young, especially in its competitive scene.
Yes.
The majority, my personal esports interest is Counter-Strike. That's the scene I follow religiously when it comes to the competitive side of it. When you see those players interviewed at events or after they've won a tournament or what have you, most of them, they genuinely love playing the game. And, this is personal opinion. I'm not going to name names or anybody, but I feel like some of the people that are maybe in the Fortnite scene or whatever, when they're a big name content creator and they're in the competitive scene of it, I feel like it's more like because they're expected to, whether they place that pressure on themselves or the pressures from their viewership to be involved in that scene, they may not necessarily enjoy playing Fortnite at that level or even at all, but they do it because that's where the money is. That's why I'm very glad to see someone who is not an established streamer win an event like that.
Me too.
Because I'm choosing to believe, obviously I don't even know the guy's alias, I don't even know who he was, but I'm choosing to believe he played the game because he enjoyed playing it and not because he makes money streaming it.
And dude was like 17 or something like that. That is just like, imagine being like, here you go, you just got like $3 million.
I bring up that topic all the time on stream. I cannot even imagine being a middle schooler or a high schooler in today's ease of accessibility, which is gaming in general, but also content creation to make $1. If you're really good at something, there's a chance that you have quite a good income as a high school student, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like an 18-year-old who enters the NBA draft and suddenly he's got a multi-million-dollar contract. Like
I mean, now that you brought that up, that means we made it. We esports now.
I would agree with Cammy on that. I really do think that, like, because I mean, who are the best gamers? It is between, like 16 and 25 is kind of like the peak. Like when you look at professional teams and players retiring at like mid-20s, that's a thing. That's like that's like what's happening. Like the lifetime of a gamer for like when you're the best seems to be.
I mean, we can have a whole other podcast on just esports in general, because this is like my super passionate nerdy side of it. But I'll try to
except for Ice 9, of course.
I mean, Ice is the greatest player I've ever played with.
Yeah, dude's like 40.
And he's still killing it.
I know.
No, what I was going to say was, with like Counter-Strike, you have guys that were in the 1.6 scene and they're now reaching 30, 31 years old, and they're still competing in what people would call tier 1, tournaments and whatnot. And I find that really interesting when you compare it to something like StarCraft or League of Legends or these other esports where, like you said, that a guy who's 24 is suddenly like, well, he's past his prime. And I wonder, is that more because those scenes have such a broader base of people to draw from that there's always going to be that next guy who's discovered and just he's younger and has better reflexes? And what is that why players retire earlier there? Or is it because they physically, mentally, whatever, can't take the strain that's placed upon being a top tier professional?
I think it's a little bit of both. My personal take is that any new kid that's up and coming has that entire ease of access to all the information of what's won tournaments and what's standard strategy over the years, and they get to apply that to someone who has zero bad habits, and that just makes a better gamer overall. I don't think it's as much of an age thing as it is a generation thing.
Okay. You're saying that like when a game first releases and it becomes an esport, when it becomes like a legitimate esport with a scene, the best players initially are not going to be the best technically or whatever. They're just the ones who are in the right place at the right time to take advantage of it. Okay.
And then the next generation learns, well, what are these people doing to succeed? And they start from ground zero, just immediately applying those things and already thinking of counter strategies. And so by the time they're the same age as that person who may be number one right now, they have so much more competitive depth of skills than maybe that number one person.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I can't speak for them. I've never been at that level playing any game.
Of course, there's exceptions to that rule, right? Where you have somebody in their 30s that is just that good at just keep innovating is the word, to stay at the top. That's the hardest thing to do. It might be easy to be number one, but it's hard as hell to keep it.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Oh yeah. Do you think that? So like, I mean, we've mentioned several established scenes. Like what, I want to hear what you guys think. What makes an esport? Does the game actually have to be, to use the cliche, does it have to be competitively viable, or does it have to be a game where people want to compete to be the best? Does it have to be a game that's designed to be a competitive title, or can it be something that was just a game that people are like, hey, we enjoy this, and now it's sort of grown its own scene behind it?
I would say it could be either. I mean, in terms of Fortnite gaining popularity, it was not designed as like an esport style game or a game that would have that style of competitive, because it is random to like a degree of what's going to drop where. And I mean, like your skill is one thing, but I don't think that battle royales have the same sort of potential to set up tournaments and stuff like that as like a standard FPS or like StarCraft or League of Legends or Smash Bros. Something that's more definitive.
But what about the randomness makes it inherently bad?
I didn't say it makes it bad, but I think...
Well, I guess inherently not an esports. Like, what makes it not competitive in the way you were referring to? Like, what does the randomness prevent?
Well, I guess something like, let's say you both drop somewhere and one person gets a scar and the other person gets like nothing good. And if you guys face off, then one person's going to have a clear advantage over the other simply because of RNG.
Is that why battle royale tournaments like have a multiple game setup where you play multiple rounds?
I think
to
so.
Sort of alleviate the bad RNG or whatever.
Yeah, so then it's how well you've done overall versus... And I mean, I just don't think it was created in the way to have the same sort of competitive nature as something like Halo, where it's like very specially designed maps with, you know, power weapons in the right places where you have to focus on team shooting. And I mean, you do have to do team shooting and all of that in
But it's
Fortnite.
It's interesting when you said Halo, because at least with MLG Halo, those were altered maps. Like Bungie as a developer for Halo 3 didn't come out and be like, oh, this is the pit, this is a competitive, like it was just a multiplayer map that was fun to play. And then when MLG gets their hands on it, they're like, well, now we're changing the game type, now we're changing the game mode, we're using Forge to change weapon placements. Like,
it's true.
That's not the developer, that's the scene changing it to make it more in the community's eyes a more competitively balanced, viable game, I guess.
Getting back to the root of your question, what I think is that games need to have, to be able to be an esport, a very high skill ceiling so that players that get into it can really grind to be the best. Because if the ceiling isn't high, then it's like, then the top level of competition isn't really that fun to watch.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I mean,
like Cammy mentioned Melee.
I get what you're saying.
And I really think Melee is a great example of that. Melee has been out for like what, almost 20 years? No, 15 years? I don't know. Like,
yeah, it's got to be 15 years. It's got to be.
Like at least, because I mean, like 2010, it had been out for a while. Brawl had been out by then for a while too. So yeah, I mean, something like Melee though, it's still played professionally now, and it is considered out of all the Smash games to have the highest ceiling of the games. Like it's the most punishable if you misstep at all, and so it's like it's the most like technically impressive of the games. But also, Fox, you had asked, like, does it matter on if people want to play it? Yeah, I'd say definitely. People being able to relate to the game too, because some games, they have such a high skill cap that the barrier to entry is like almost impossible, because you just don't even want to get into the game. But if someone's not going to get into the game, they're not going to really care who's professional at it or who's the best if it's just not fun to watch, or if it's not relatable or something they want to play. Which is why I think some of the games that are so mainstream right now and have such a good tournament have that ability for someone to come into it and play it, and also be able to enjoy watching it on a professional level. It kind of takes the right mix of everything, actually, if you want to have it work out perfectly.
Does an esport need to be able to be understood by someone who's never played it?
No.
Because I think that's one of the biggest things that, from the more business side of it, is how do you draw in an audience that's not the rabid fan base of the game itself? I don't want to draw too similar of a line to traditional sports, but like anyone who watches, and maybe this isn't even a mainstream traditional sport, but anyone who watches track and field, you know what it's like to run. If you've never played a computer game before, if you've never played League of Legends and you try to watch it, like, you're not going to have a clue what's going on. Is that something that the game needs to promote in and of itself, or is that something that if you want to get into it as an esport, you need to dedicate the time to understanding it?
I think it's a little bit of both, but this is maybe why me personally, I prefer watching the simpler to understand esports. Like, a fighting game is very simple.
Two guys are trying to beat each other up. Yeah.
Right. CS, I think, is also kind of a simple concept. It's one team is planting a bomb, the other are trying to stop you from planting the bomb.
Simple in its most base level of understanding a game.
Yeah, first-person shooter is so easy. Like, a guy has a gun. He pointed at the other guy. The other guy is now dead. Like that's an audience can immediately understand what's happening there, even if they have no clue how to play the game.
Exactly.
You know?
But when something like StarCraft or League of Legends,
you watch League of Legends and you don't know what's going on, like your head's gonna be spinning around.
It's just another language, essentially. It's too much to understand.
Even Fortnite is a little beyond my comprehension for this competitions.
Oh my gosh, like how they build.
I'm like, what the hell is going on? What is considered good? Is that a tower? Did he just build that? Like,
it really is crazy. And I mean, I remember playing Fortnite a little bit at the beginning, and then hopping in like a couple months ago or something, just like because one of my friends was like, oh, come play a game with me. Oh my gosh, people have gotten so much better at it, and so much better at like building and all those aspects. It's just it's getting harder to track.
It's no longer like, oh, that guy's a genius, he figured out how to do X, Y, and Z, and now every person who picks up a mouse knows how to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, nobody gets their own personal skill set anymore. It's everyone's skill set now that everything's accessible as far as info and YouTube and Twitch.
It's like a world of screen peekers.
Yeah, and if you
that's exactly it.
If you keep that info to yourself, people, well, that's against the spirit of competition. You shouldn't have hidden that. You should have shared it with everybody.
Well, there was one CS:GO tournament that I didn't watch it, but I've seen like highlights of it where they knew a specific glitch where you could like hop onto the wall and essentially just like pop off boost.
OAuth boost is like the most infamous thing in esports for that level. For what I was just talking about, I knew you were bringing that up.
I mean, it's a great example of what you were just saying, right? Like it's the example.
We don't have to get into the fine details. I'm just gonna say yes. So a cool one was Smash Melee. The initial grassroots scene was developing at different rates in Japan across the world and in the US, and on both the East Coast and the West Coast of the US as well. So maybe 3 pockets of that. At one point, there was a competition in Japan, and all the American players were like, what is this movement? How are they doing this? And eventually, that is now the entry point of what a normal player has to know before they can even start practicing.
Yeah, that's a fundamental now.
Wave dashing.
Yep. Wave dashing, yeah.
Oh. Yeah. No, I remember hopping into it, like playing a game of Melee with some of my friends years after it came out. I'm like, I was pretty good at this game as a kid. And then I see them playing, I'm like, I don't know anything. I am so bad. Because like, when your sample size is like 10 people and you're like, yeah, I'm top 5. Like,
oh yeah, no, that's I think, well, maybe not today because of the ease of accessibility with online play, but back in like 2007 when I first bought an Xbox, you play with your friends and you're like, yeah, pretty good, and then you go online and you're like, I don't know how to play this game, do I? Like, I really don't know how to play this game. It's a completely different world.
This is a really good topic shift right here. Is the, let's say, universal skill set of a gamer improving over this last decade? I'm going to use Guitar Hero as an example. The Fire and Flames used to be the actual pinnacle. This used to be, if you can even pass this song, you're good. Then it was, if you can 5-star, then it was, oh, you need a full combo. Nowadays, it's like, oh yeah, let's warm up with 250% through the Fire and Flames.
Yes.
As in 250% speed.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, because like you're saying, it's accessible to everybody. And because of that, it raises the ceiling as well, or not the ceiling. It raises the floor because people perceive the floor in a different place. If they see someone else do it, they're like, oh, I can do this.
Yep. What used to be like we are witnessing a god is now we are witnessing a normal player.
Yeah, with infinite amounts of montages out there, you almost think that unless you're playing constantly like a montage, then you're not at that level. So it really does push you to the next level, though, I'd say, and boost competition to a crazy point.
I've seen this in every game I've ever participated in, including Destiny, where it's just over the years, man, people's new, let's just say, skill book or tool set is so much better than when the game came out.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. No, like, you show somebody a Halo montage from like 2008, like those were the highlights. Like that's what you remember watching on the broadcast, and you're like, oh my god, that was so sick. And now you show it to a 17-year-old, he's like, that's lame. I can do that. It doesn't have the same impact.
Dude, Fluxy and Furion were like, did you guys ever see their montages back in like Halo 3?
Phurion, Furion?
Yeah. I forget the spelling, but I remember both. They had like a dual montage, and I was just being like, and it was that was like revolutionary to me. I do think that gaming has changed significantly over the years like that, and developers are putting so much more time into a game past its release. Where before some games had been made and were made to be like long-term playable. For example, like RuneScape, like you were saying. But a lot of games, back in the day, it was just released and that was it. Maybe a patch or two or something. But now it's like, well, with games like Call of Duty, they were meant to be remade each year. So instead of having patches, they came out with just a new skin for the game. But now I think a lot of developers have seen like long-term success where they keep building it. I think one great example is Rainbow Six Siege, because when it released, it didn't have a crazy amount of hype surrounding it, and it didn't have the biggest player base, but the developers have really stuck behind the game and have kept grinding it out, and the player base has kind of kept building and building, and now it's actually it's a very competitive game. It's got a high skill ceiling, and there's a lot of people that really enjoy playing it. I gotta say that's one where I see it and I'm like, that is a great success.
Yeah, let's take a second and appreciate those games for the past decade. Rainbow Six Siege, that turnaround, Titanfall 2 existing in the first place.
Yes.
I think Call of Duty as a whole, if we go all the way back to our impactful games of the decade, like even outside of the gameplay, Call of Duty basically set the trend for what the market came to expect, because every year there's a new Call of Duty. And so what that led to was games would be announced, they'd be hyped up, and everyone would be like, oh, is it going to be the game that finally dethrones Call of Duty? And that's so unfair to compare everything to one game, but that's what people were used to. That's their measuring stick. Every year, Call of Duty sells, 10 million copies or whatever the number, I'm sure is actually higher.
Oh, yeah.
And so Rainbow Six Siege comes out and people are like, oh, well, is it the COD killer? No, it's not meant to be. It's its own game. Stop holding everything up against one particular title.
Cammy just brought up Titanfall 2, and I gotta say, I played that at launch a bit, and I loved it. It was super fun. And then I stopped playing it, and I don't know why. And it's having a bit of a resurgence, which makes me super happy, because it was a really well-made, fun game. Like, they did a great job with it. And in terms of like why a game takes off or not, I don't know why some do when there are so many good games out there.
I never really played much Titanfall 2 like at all. I remember playing the beta with Bones. Was it one of those games where the skill for entry was just kind of a little bit higher than what most games were, and so that turned off the casual audience from playing it over an extended period?
I thought they had a great skill floor personally. Like, you build up time to get your mech. All right, well, it seems like we have an insane amount of content, even just for this first resurgence of the podcast or whatever, just covering this decade. I was hoping to jump forward into the other one, and even that, we still have other points that I was trying to cover in this that we've gone past. But man, we've covered just about everything from the games we've enjoyed that have been impactful for us, impactful in general, how esports has gone, how gaming companies have gone good and bad, different platforms and stuff like that. So I think I'm going to dial it back and have to reel in the conversation from here, and it's something we can maybe pick back up at another time. But I just want to say, Vox and Cammy, thank you guys both so much for joining me today. It was awesome getting to have you guys here and digest some of this stuff with you.
It's always fun to do this sort of thing. Love you both.
Thanks for having us again, and I look forward to the future when we pick up the discussion.
See you in 3 years.
And 3 more years for the next one, boys. Hey, thank you all for checking in and watching this. I really appreciate it, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.